one thing to say to you. Tetsuo!
Kaneda!
Yes, everyone out there in the TBD universe. We are returning and starting off our grand, glorious anime block by doing the quintessential, iconoclastic guy. It's Akira, okay? 1988's Akira. Widely hailed as one of the greatest anime films ever made, based on what is widely hailed as one of the greatest mangas ever made. It has entered the hearts and minds of multiple generations with its beauty and soundtrack by Philip Glass. We will all be...
I could buy that.
It is, actually. It is Philip Glass.
For sure.
Yeah.
I know that there were, like, 3 different iterations of the soundtrack based on, like, when it was coming out and, like, which version it was.
Okay,
was the
I know
Japanese one.
Okay, the American release is straight Philip Glass.
Okay.
Da!
Which I love.
Da! I can't take it seriously. I can't fucking take it seriously. It's like, alright, this incredibly climactic, like, emotional moment. It's dead silence. They've, like, beautifully done the sound design. And then it slowly pans up. Tetsuo looking like some motherfucking caped Superman Goku hybrid son of a bitch with his hair flying and that bitch look on his face, and it gets up to the bitch look on his face just in time for DAW! Totally breaking the mood.
I like that, honestly.
Oh, God. The weird little mood breaks where it just drops into comedy for no apparent reason, and you're like, what?
Yeah, there are some definite, lines that, especially in English, you're just like, why?
Wait,
why?
what?
Why? Which, did you watch it most recently in the sub or dub?
Oh, I always watch sub.
Okay.
I pretty much only do dubs on Miyazaki films, because I think that they actually have decent dubs. Though, generally, I watch the subtitled instead. And there was one movie, I'm trying to think of what it was, but like the English dub was so much better than the original fucking Japanese. And I'm trying to remember what it was, but I can't now. And it's like the one movie I've ever seen where I was like, wow, like this dialogue was shit when you released this in Japan. And the dialogue here is great. I don't know what the fuck you were all smoking, but I would like a shipment.
Completely non sequitur, but have you heard of ghost stories at all?
Ghost stories or goat stories?
Ghost.
Okay, ghost. My ears are a little bit plugged up today. Okay, are there ghosts?
Although I know that goats are tasty. Tasty. Yeah. Anyways, it was an anime that was released in Japan to like poor review because it was supposed to be a horror anime.
Oh, for sure.
And like it wasn't well received, so they literally shipped off the rights to America and basically said, yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want with dialogue.
Oh, wow.
So, like, the entirety of the series is just voice actors having fun, saying stupid shit.
Oh, my God.
It's kind of amazing. Like, it's not good, but I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, but it's the right kind of bad.
Right.
Which makes it wonderful. I'm super down to check it out. I've not even heard of it. But especially considering that the main anime dubbing world is so fucking tiny. There's, like, I think a grand total of 30 or 40 voice actors who do 98% of the anime dubs.
You have certain companies that get the rights to stuff for the U.S. audience. And then within those companies, there's like 15 people maybe that do the voices. So especially if you're listening to stuff that's released by the same people, you'll be like, oh, that's that jack off from that fucking anime. And it's just like,
even across companies, you end up having a lot of like name overlap.
Yeah, there is.
Probably because it's again the people who people working high end voiceover gigs. Who are on contract to these companies, and the companies know that they can pull them in, do a minimum number of takes, and like walk out with something usable.
Right.
Which makes a lot of sense, especially if you're trying to like import anime as your bread and butter, which is an increasing market these days. It's a growth market, but it's still a niche market. And, though less and less so every day, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
But coming back to Akira. This is one of those interesting ones where I gotta come down kind of against the grain of history and amassed opinion
on
the film. And obviously I'm not saying that it's a bad film, and I'm aware of the influence that the art and the animation did. I'm aware of the fact that it was this huge step up in terms of production values in anime and inspired all of this crazy later shit that otherwise wouldn't have been in the genre. But as its own standalone film, I find it just really lacking in a lot of specific key areas that are just kind of things that you're supposed to just kind of accept and gloss over, and oh, it's trippy and alright, and none of these characters are explained, and obviously this is supposed to be some significant moment, but I don't know what the fuck it is, because they're trying to, as we discussed before with, say, The Godfather, they're trying to condense a huge work into a single piece. And I can't say explicitly things that they missed from the manga because I haven't read the manga. But my understanding is that, the manga is over a dozen books long.
It was released more as like a serial throughout the course of several years, and then it got condensed to like 6 mini like tomes.
Okay.
And I haven't read all of it, but from my knowledge of the series, a lot of it's spooned throughout the 6. So like elements are taken from most of them. But it's definitely front heavy. So you have like 80% of one, and then maybe like 20% of two.
Okay.
And then it slowly dials off, and then it tries to bring it back to some of the themes of the way stuff ends in like 5 and 6.
Okay.
Which I think is part of the problem with it. I will say that having the guy who originally made the manga direct and write for the movie, I'm willing to buy it more of his coherent piece how he wanted it, even though there's a lot of room for interpretation and a lot of room for
questions.
Yeah,
big fucking questions. And that gets to me. Though it's cool. I did know that it was the same guy who had done the adaptation for film. But again, I don't know how much experience that guy had. And that's some research I should have done. I don't know how much experience that guy had in terms of
that was
film.
His transition to film.
Okay.
He'd been entirely like a manga writer, and then that what switched his track, essentially. He went on to do a bunch of other stuff with anime.
Cool. Well, and that makes a lot of sense then from some of the open spaces that are obviously like single visual frames in his head that he was trying to transition into this motion on the screen. And visually did a gorgeous job of.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, I think that the entire film visually is close to flawless. Other than the fact that Tetsuo looks like Goku Superman for the last like 30 minutes, which for me I was like, I get that this is before Dragon Ball,
right,
and I get,
but in your head you were more experienced with Dragon Ball first. You were like, this is just like that other thing.
And it's also, he doesn't look like intimidating. He still looks like the same whiny sack of shit. Which, okay, that's like my big one of my big abiding things rewatching it. And this is only my second or third time watching it, and the last 2 times were like 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and I watched it in close proximity, and then I've given a long break and I'm coming back to it. One of the big problems I have is that you don't really know anything about Tetsuo. He's this kind of bland. You know a little bit about Kaneda because he's got the like, yeah, I got my sweet bike. Oh shit, I've got attitude. And Tetsuo is the like slightly quieter guy who's a little bit nerdy about the machines. And that's like all you get before you get him jumping off the deep end and being Psycho McBitch Pants. And then he's Psycho McBitch Pants for the rest of the film. And I just didn't care
you get
what happened to him. I cared what happened to Kaneda more, even if he was jackass, but, like, it's because you get to know him. You don't get to know this person. And you only care about him as a foil of these other characters, so you get more flavor of. Hell, you get the 2 nameless other jack-off bike gang members. You get more flavor and you get more character from them than you do from Tetsuo.
I think that there is substance and there is flavor and there is character, but basically all of that is played out in flashbacks with Kaneda, and that they're very much linked to one another. You get the whole thing about the fact that he was orphaned, that he was picked on. He's basically got this giant younger brother complex.
Yes, but you get one scene of that right at the end of the movie. It's 90 seconds long. It's like, oh yeah, was this yours?
I don't know. Like, to me, there's always been that thing up front of Tetsuo and Kaneda and that close friendship, and Tetsuo always wanting to surpass him.
Yes.
Even before you get to the later stuff. And that's definitely what I would consider at least a core of the character.
Yes.
And basically the wanting to surpass Kaneda consuming Tetsuo.
And I agree and that's obviously the build they're trying to create. And they do establish that. But that's it. Like, those flashbacks establish, okay, Kaneda's always been his protector, has always been the older brother figure, has always been the one who's like, hey, take it easy, has always been the one who's had his back and has had to rescue him. But what else can we say about Tetsuo other than he is obsessed with not being the younger brother to Kaneda?
I mean, there isn't
There's
much.
nothing else revealed in the film. There's the one line at the beginning where they reveal, oh, he likes machines and he's interested in machines. Because he's talking about, like, oh, cool, it's got to be at 15,000 RPM. And then when the bike dies, he's like, oh, you need to keep it over 5. And he's, like, talking about the machine. So 2 lines. I'm sorry, 2 lines where they deal with that. And every other interaction he has is post-psychic thing. And is him whining like a bitch that his friend is helping him. Like, he's being beaten, and the girl he likes is about to be raped brutally in front of him. And what he gets mad about is Kaneda coming and helping. Like, that's the first real, like, you get that, like, one scene with him and what's her poor name? Who just gets killed miserably.
His girlfriend?
Yeah, his
Kaori.
girlfriend.
Kaori.
Yeah, Kaori. You get, like, the one scene of, like, the 2 of them hanging out after he escapes from the facility and before he steals Kaneda's bike. And even then, it's, like, the petulant, like, I don't know, we're gonna be on the run. Fuck Kaneda. And you're like, well, but Guy, there's not... What? And I just feel like they didn't give any depth. It's a one-dimensional character. And as a working cog in this big, beautiful visual machine of a film, I can respect that. But as a character that I'm supposed to give a shit about, I don't think it works.
Fair enough. I mean, I kind of do, simply because of how his actions affect everybody else in terms of the greater schemes of the different factions working against each other, in terms of how it affects his friends that have played into the story up till then. But I don't particularly think that you're supposed to like Tetsuo. Like, even from what I've read of the manga, like, he's a fucking nasty person.
Well, but at least you get him, I would hope. Even if you don't necessarily like him. Or at least there's some sympathy, because then otherwise, Tetsuo being sucked into the vortex going, no, save me, Kaneda! At the end, I'm like, no, Kaneda, leave. This bitch who's been an albatross on your neck all movie, who's multiple times threatened to murder you, and then the next time Kaneda shows up, he's like, oh, hey, Kaneda, we're cool, right? No, we're not cool. You murdered our friend after killing our other friend and stealing his meth, And you threatened to kill me 3 times. No, we're not cool, Tetsuo. Let's talk. But then that's another problem for me. Nobody stops and talks to anybody else explaining anything going on the whole film. And if anybody had any of the individual characters who has a piece of the picture of what's going on, there would have been so much less fuckery. If the scientist had stopped and talked to the colonel, if the colonel had stopped and talked to the people on the council, if the people on the council had stopped and talked to anyone, if Tetsuo had talked to Kaneda, if Kaneda had talked to Tetsuo, if the children had just talked to Tetsuo, we wouldn't have had convergence, Big Bang, quantum singularity blows up a third of Tokyo again. Like, and that irks me, because I'm like, but y'all could have saved so much work. And I cut Tetsuo and Kaneda a little bit of slack because they're 15 and delinquents in driving around on stolen motorcycles. I cut them a little bit more slack for having bad communication skills. But, like, you have these, like, super powerful, supposedly, the next step of human evolution, psychic beings that have transcended our reality, that can't go, kid, and talk to the kid. They literally just cryptically go, you are not doing the right thing. Well, who the fuck are you? You're not my dad. Attack him! And then they attack him. And because he's like wild flailing bitch face, I'm like...
They're espers, so they can probably read a bit into what's going on with Tetsuo and his character. A. And B, their primary objective is to get Akira. They don't give a shit about him.
About Tetsuo? Yeah, they do. They talk about that. He's one of us now.
But he's also a means to the greater goal.
Yes. And that's true. But they didn't want things to go down the way that they went down. And how much easier would it have been if they were like, Tetsuo, calm your tits. We'll all do this together. Let's all get ultimate power and descend to Sky Place or wherever they go. I'm calling it Sky Place because they don't fucking tell us shit.
Don't worry,
just
Patrick,
a big bang.
It has already begun.
Thanks for not explaining what is converging, what's happening. And that's, again, I'm like, I get that they were trying to make it mysterious and somewhat open to interpretation, but fuck that. You're presenting this incredibly complicated story about all of these different factions moving against each other. The villain, arguably the villain of the film, the guy who's leaked everything and is the reason that there's a fucking Akira cult on the street, the guy who organizes the kidnapping of one of the psychic kids at the beginning that, like, activates Tetsuo and causes all of the other crap in the film and kills all of these fucking people, who's, like, running away and, like, secretly trying to, like, take over the government and seize the power of Akira for himself and, like, the whole nine. Like, this schmuck isn't even built up. You get, like, 3 scenes of him grand total in the whole film, and you have his, like, epic, like, running away, taking his heart medication scene, and I was just like, so, I don't care. Just shoot him and let's have this scene over. Because it's not like he's this person that you've even been built up to hate. He's, like, a subline. But there isn't enough material, in the same way that I'm like, there isn't enough material to truly be able to, like, know and like any of the main characters. I don't think that there's enough material to be able to know and like him. The only characters that I think that they actually, like, put a bunch of material into are Kaneda and the Colonel. And, like, I'll be honest, the Colonel's my favorite character. And this is from, like, a guy with serious anarchist leanings in his personal life. And I'm like, my favorite character is the military dictator. Like, because he's the only one without his head up his ass.
Right.
Who's trying to save people's lives. He's the only one. And like, you have this whole, like, oh, the fall of this guy's horrible, nefarious plan. But we've covered his plan for, like, 5% of this film. I don't know what you barely explain the political arguments going on. It's just general, there's economy things. Taxes. Students protesting. But there's no setup as to why this cabal of people are in power. Why this guy is thinking that this plan is the good plan to do all these jackass fucking things. There's none of that. I find the narrative severely lacking in cohesion, support, and fulfillment.
That's fine.
I'm sorry.
No,
like,
it's,
again,
it's not
this is
fine
like,
for your overall view of Akira and the greater scope of things. But it's very clear to me that I'm not going to change that opinion. I don't think necessarily that, this is what I would go to in terms of, like, top-notch story.
Yeah.
For the film anyways. But I still enjoy it. I don't know if it's enjoying it for what it is. I don't know if it's because I have more knowledge of expansion of universe. I don't know if it's because I've seen it more times. I don't know what it is. But I enjoy the movie as a whole. The animation, I think, is absolutely beautiful. That has been one of your things that you've been like, yeah, I've got problems, but it looks good.
It does.
And you mentioned the music. Like, I like the music, honestly. It can be cheesy and ridiculous, but there's a lot of things that, like, it still somewhat fits the scene for me.
I feel that. I actually love the music entirely, other than the daw, because I don't know why, but the daw makes me laugh. It happened the first time I watched the film. It happened this time. When the daw hits, I laugh. Especially when there's a long pause right before it. And it's probably because of the stupid running joke about that being the noise that Odo makes on Deep Space Nine when he's in pain. Is he goes, daw! And so, like, every time there's daw in the background, I lose my shit. Otherwise, I will totally...
Deep Space Nine was after this, so that could have been an inspiration from Akira.
Oh, God, I didn't even think of that. Oh, no. Oh, God.
Everything you know is Akira, Mike.
It's all one giant
I just called
web.
you Mike, by the way.
Right. I know. It's all right. And you'll still be unforgiven.
This is very true.
No, and I can definitely acknowledge that. And it's not like I didn't enjoy the film, and I don't enjoy the film. I do enjoy the film. But it's not... It doesn't, for me, hold the same kind of place as a great movie as a lot of other anime films are for me. That are these truly all around, I think, like, beautifully crafted cinematic pieces. And I'm not saying that I think it's bad, and I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy it or that I wouldn't enjoy watching it again, but it's certainly not going to be at the top of my list of things to rewatch or of top anime films for me, other than from a visual aspect. And that's, again, like, I think this is one of the few times that we've come down kind of on very opposite sides on a film.
I don't know if that's entirely... Well, on a singular film, maybe not. I mean, Godfather certainly had elements of me being like, it's okay, Patrick. You're okay.
Like, get off me! Yeah, like, no. Which, and you made some very, very strong points during that podcast as well, arguing for it. And... You've made some good ones as well on here. I still have that issue of you're not building up the characters and you're not explaining what the shit is going on. Though especially as an exploration of kind of the mind-bending stuff that they've done with anime over the course of the last 20, 25 years. Like, I feel like a lot of that comes directly from how far they were willing to go with bending reality and being out there and strange in that film. And it's, again, like, that kind of a legacy. If the film hadn't been made, we wouldn't have Paprika and stuff like that, or Paranoia Agent that so plays with, like, twisting the reality, what's real, what's not, how do we play with the visual medium, with the soundscape. And I think that sound design on all of Akira was so on.
Yeah, especially, like, the beginning, even, like, the silence with the whole explosion going off and the end of Tokyo and the transformation into Neo Tokyo was just it's just excellent, and it's the punch at the start of the movie.
Yeah, it's stark and it's empty and it's showing you, and then it's like, and then. And I thought that was beautiful. Every time they brought it back to the dead silence and just the visual elements, even the tiny little tinklings, the scene where Tetsuo wakes up and you get the first iteration of the 3 avatars of the Esper children. I thought was. The first time I saw it, that scene just visually and in the way that they start the sound so early and just so very light, but it adds so much to the reality distortion of the entire thing. That I think that whoever did their sound design as a whole was brilliant, and I love Philip Glass's work on it. And in general, I actually dig on Philip Glass's work, whether or not it's,
As I turn and look into the sun, the rays burn my eyes. Happy, 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 make everybody happy.
What?
It's a South Park parody from season 1. Their Christmas production, they can't do anything that's offensive to anybody, so basically all religious imagery is taken out. Everything with Santa's taken out. So they're left with a composure by Philip Glass and like everybody in like gray leotards dancing. It's absolutely insane.
How do I not remember this? Because this sounds so directly up my alley. I grew up with Philip Glass. My parents are both fans. And outside of one very angry British man that they were friends with, who gave a stinging negative review to Philip Glass's work once during dinner, on I think Bottle of Wine 3.
That's generally when things start to get good.
Well, especially with Stewart. But even this, like other than that, I've generally heard very good things about his work, and things like E-Taipu I thought were really, really cool and out there, and he does do a lot of unique stuff. And it was funny, I didn't know going into the film the first time. I watched it with Devin, who, for the audience out there, he was our guest on the Venture Brothers episode.
I like that we've explained more about Devin than we have about Akira.
What?
We haven't actually, talked about, the setting or anything.
Well, but who the fuck? I mean, but they don't fucking tell us. But you're right. We should actually explain for those of the audience who haven't seen it. And those of the audience who haven't seen it, you really should. It is one of those, Hallmark, big, iconic anime films. Iconic, not iconoclastic. You said that earlier, you jackass. Speaking to myself, I should be speaking to you. I'm sorry. That changed the genre kind of in the same way that I think probably everybody should see 2001: A Space Odyssey or Citizen Kane or those big movies that even if you don't necessarily personally care for it, changed the genre or reshaped the genre. I think it's important to see. So I would definitely recommend you do it. But yeah, I watched it with Devin the first time, and at the end of it, he was like, yeah, it's Philip Glass. It's one of the things Philip Glass is best known for outside of the classical music scene. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. And I still laughed at the Dawes. But explaining Akira, the film takes place in the year 2019, and 32 years ago in 1988. So, 33 years ago, at least at the timeline of the film.
Right.
Some kind of great calamity befell Tokyo.
Well, I think they said after World War III, so that whole thing was part of World War III.
That's the implication, is that was the end event, or it was the inciting event of World War III, because there's those lines where they're talking about we're unsure if Akira caused World War III, and especially with the timeline of events as set up in the film, it's unclear whether it was the influence of Akira's psychic energy pouring out into humanity as a whole that caused a world war, or if the world war was going on, the world war was the reason they had the weapons project that created Akira, and then Akira blew up, and the whole world was like, oh god, so maybe let's end the world war shit. Because they say it's been like 30 years since the end of the war. And so that would give like a 3-year grace period. It's weird. Again, the timeline is not 100% distinct. But essentially, there was some huge calamity that happened to Tokyo that essentially wiped out the city around the time of the Third World War. 33 years later, they've now built a giant new multiplex next to the ruins of what was Tokyo, and life continues apace in a cyberpunk super metropolis version of Tokyo, where the vast majority of people are primarily interested in basically hedonistically going about their lives and ignoring the rest of the world. It's implied, they don't go into detail with it, but there's so many pronouncements by different characters about, like, you know, the city has become decadent and hedonistic, everyone involved in their own little dance, and right, you know.
And the cop should be more worried about, you know, other shit that's going on rather than a bunch of people necking and shit like that.
Yeah, unto this came Conan, the Sumerian, destined to bear the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon a fluid brow. Joking, obviously, there's no Conan. But the film follows a pair of friends who are in a juvenile motorcycle gang, which is apparently a big thing in Neo Tokyo. There's lots of them, though you'd think that they would come up with better security measures for the motorcycles to keep the 15-year-olds from stealing the motorcycles to be in the motorcycle gangs with. But, like, these 15-year-olds are, like, full-on murdering each other in the street with spiked pipes and shit. And unto this came Conan. Or rather...
Get out!
Or rather, strange-looking child escapes from a government facility with the help of a mysterious man. The man is shot to death. The child comes into contact with one of the biker gang guys and is immediately recaptured by the government. The guy from the biker gang begins exhibiting strange symptoms and hallucinations. And the film takes off from there. And the big question of it is, what is Akira? And why is everybody trying to control it? Because there's this huge amount of drama between, like, there's dissidents fighting the government. There's the government that has, like, factions within it that all want different things to do with this Akira. There's this cult that thinks that Akira is, like, the coming of the end of the world and will remake the world in its image and is basically God. And nobody really knows what this thing is or where it is or what its deal is, except for the government group that is in control of Akira at this current point. And the whole thing deals with, like, the humanity's psychic potentialities, and tries to tie in this really cool idea about genetic memory, which I thought was awesome. It was something that on my earlier watches, actually, I hadn't soaked up. I was like, what? Too much during that section, but was like, okay, you're making a point about genetic memories, and what if it goes back both ways through the timeline, so you can have a precursor species suddenly take on all of these traits of a much later species in the evolutionary chain. And with what are the problems?
Tetsuo being talked about as being amoeboid and consuming everything. And
yeah, as, you know, if an amoeba were suddenly to gain all of the cognitive and physical powers of humanity, the result would be a horrible shit show, because the amoeba only knows and wants to do one thing. And in the same way, you have humans who essentially create and protect their own environment in which they are king, and that's what we're great at, given the power of some much further evolved being. And that being is Akira. But it is also the potential energy inside of all of us.
Right.
And it's also this kid from during the war. And also a philosophical concept of human potential. Which was another thing where I was like, again, you're connecting all of these ideas, but I'd like a little bit more differentiation in between which one is what. Because, well, it was a kid.
Yeah.
But is it also this other thing? I get that you're saying the kid is the thing, but if the thing existed before the kid, shouldn't the thing also have a name that isn't just the kid? Or was it always called Akira, and then they also named the kid Akira, which seems like a bad idea to me, because you're, like, just inviting this whole shit to go down. I mean, maybe it's always been Tetsuo since the beginning. I mean, they aren't now the beginning of the universe? What? The Big Bang? What? That's again, I'm sorry. I really
will
should.
come again. It has already begun.
But what has begun? Which I know is part of the point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's interesting stuff. I mean, back with the Espers talking about choosing a future.
Yeah.
That they can
use.
Yeah. So there's interesting things with it thematically in terms of rebirth, in terms of destruction leading to creation. There's also the very obvious, atomic bomb thing.
A little bit.
Which has permeated 50%, I would say, at least, of Japanese creation in terms of media, in terms of what... I mean, fucking Godzilla, giant atomic bomb allegory.
Well, and I mean, I think rightfully and understandably so, considering they're the only nation on the planet that's actually been hit by that. And it was the only thing that actually broke the Japanese will to fight in World War II. I mean, we were firebombing their cities daily, hitting civilian targets, killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on a weekly basis. And Japan was still ready to be like, you can lick us. Like, keep it coming. We'll take it. Until the bombs happened, and the Emperor was like, no. But that, like, national defeat, I think, rendered something really interesting into the modern culture, because there is that kind of, like, constant idea of the force that is so great that you can't possibly understand, and you can't possibly stop, and just happens. And you have to deal with this force that's completely unstoppable. And I think it's created a lot of cool things in that arena. I'm sorry, that's sideline off of your thought.
No. I like the greater themes and the greater imagery in it.
Yeah.
I also like some of the imagery that doesn't really have to do anything. Like, Kaneda's bike is fucking iconic.
Oh, yeah.
And so's the fucking pill jacket. Like,
yeah.
Pill jacket's stupid, but I still want one.
Yeah, the pill jacket is pretty sweet. And yeah, that bike has fantastic design. Though, again, because it's the 80s and it was anime, it had to be motorcycles. I do also like that Kaneda's, areas of expertise are precisely two. Beating the shit out of people and driving a motorcycle well, and otherwise he is utterly worthless.
I mean, that's basically all that he knows.
Oh, I know. Which I
the
love.
whole point that's kind of made throughout is that he's not the smartest guy.
Yeah, well, he had nothing to do with this. Like, the great point that gets made with the kids, with the Espers, where they're like, he did nothing wrong. He had nothing to do with this horrible shit show, and he's stuck in the middle of it because he is actually poor jack-off that he is trying to do the right thing. Right. And the rest of the Espers being like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you make a point. All right. All right,
Takashi, we'll save him. Because we can.
And then we'll all Superman off into the Big Bang. But again, I also loved a bunch of the, like, detail imagery. Just the panning shots in the bar. The first time you go into the bar, and you get all of those glorious panning shots of, like, all of the, like, wasted assholes lying around in all the booths. I love the design and the detail on the clowns. As awful as the clowns are. The just like the grunge and the contrasting grunge and beauty of the like cyberpunk megaplex that they're all living in is so beautifully articulated with like every frame. And so like all of that background design, Tagashi or whatever his name is, who just gets killed for no reason by Tetsuo when they go to the bar because they're gonna dick around at the bar that doesn't card them. And it turns out that Tetsuo has murdered the bartender for all of his pills. Which I was also like, really? The guy, you walked in and you were like, give me pills. And the guy was like, I mean, sure, it's gonna be pricey. I mean, there's riots. But yeah, sure, kid. I'll sell you pills. Murder! Fucking Tetsuo. But it is intriguing, especially you were saying that he's a very nasty character in the manga, which is fascinating as kind of like a flip side of the, permanent younger brother complex. Like, I want to be better than you. I love you, but I also resent you for being stronger than me and always, like, being on top, even though I'm smarter than you thing. But, like, having that, which generally goes along with a relatively gentle or good nature in media, instead being paired with a truly vicious nature, is a really interesting idea. And I'm intrigued by it.
I think it kind of makes sense in the greater scope of things. If you're somebody who feels like you've been kicked around your entire life, you want to kick other people around.
Yeah, that's very true. There's a good quote from Burn Notice on that. No, just really quick, which was what kind of person throws their political enemies into a prison and tortures them to death? Generally, someone who feels so bad about themselves that they feel justified in doing anything to anyone. Murderers, by and large, are whining losers. Which, sorry, sideline, but you were going to say.
I don't remember what I was going to say, but that's cool. I like that quote.
I'm sorry.
It feels applicable.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I was going to say, in terms of the scope of the manga, Tetsuo also has his powers for much longer.
Yeah.
And, like, ends up being the leader of one of the main factions in the city. So he's got a lot more sway of power over people. So you're able to see more of what he does with his power rather than just lashing out as a scared child, which is a lot of what he does in Akira.
It's like it's him reactively being like, fuck you, and like waves of doom, which that actually is really cool because that gives so much more room for the character to blossom and grow and for you to understand who he is and where he'll go. That's really cool. I didn't realize. I figured that the manga probably dealt with a little bit more of the timeline and that it was a little bit more stretched out, but I also figured that it still moved pretty quickly from
book 1
the
and
point
book 2 and then like part of like book 5 and book 6 with like other elements thrown in.
Oh god. So they basically did what they did with Perfume, just not as successily.
But I love Perfume.
Oh, I
love this movie too.
So do I. I adore Perfume. Or they did the what Disney did with the Black Cauldron.
Ugh.
Which
kill me now.
I detested, but tried to do. I'm glad we agree that the Black Cauldron is shit.
Well, both of us have read the books.
Yes,
that's
so. Yeah, it's that same thing of it's like, okay, you took a little bit of book 1, a chunk of book 2, and then like the very end of book 5, and you hammered it into like a shit stack of a film.
And also specifically with a Black Cauldron, like the way that you combine things, and what you chose to combine, and what you chose to eventually call your final product.
Yeah.
Like, the problems with all three of those.
Like, every part of that fucking production. Creeper or Grimer or whatever the fuck the green little shit is called. He just flies away on the dragon at the end and it's like, I'm the new Dark Lord. And you're like, well, you guys haven't solved anything. Thanks, bros. is obnoxious as crap.
Yeah, one of the things the American live action movie, if and when that ever comes to fruition, because it's been talked about several times.
Black Cauldron?
No, of Akira.
What?
You didn't know about this?
No, they proposed a live action American version?
I'm pretty sure it's live action. Let me double check.
Oh my god, that combines like two of my least favorite things.
And live action.
Yeah, No, American adaptations of foreign films. And it's not universally true. There are some decent adaptations that have been done. I thought Seven Samurai to Magnificent Seven was decent. Oh my god. No. What? No. You fucking... Well, I agree with the remake director. That's... Oh, fuck, dude. Why? Like, this is gonna be...
I don't know that it'll actually end up, like, getting made, making it to theaters. But the one thing that I'm hopeful for is if they end up doing it, and if they end up doing a multi-series thing, which, from what I've heard, it could be up to 3 movies.
Okay,
is that it will allow more expansion within the universe and more entry into other characters and more experience of other elements and other themes that are at play.
Yeah.
Because you get introduction to characters, but like some of the main players in the overarching series and the overarching story, you don't even fucking get. I mean, the priestess on the bridge, who's like the cult leader, actually ends up being like one of the main like powers in the city, but like there's nothing to do with her in the goddamn movie.
Yeah, there's two scenes that are like mocking the cultists, and everything else is like. And you get that great thing at the end where the bridge flips and they all die. And it's like, well, goodbye, cultists. Your god doesn't care about you. Which, again, they make that whole point at the beginning where it's like, what we need to be concerned about are the political maneuverings going on. Because it's really dangerous. And I would be really excited to see all of that really fleshed out with something more. I think that the big issue is finding, as with any adaptation, finding a place where it fits as well as with the original culture and time. In the same way that I think that specifically Magnificent Seven worked as an adaptation of Seven Samurai, was because it was culturally a very, very similar milieu and idea between the Ronin and the, like, freelance gunfighters, just with less of the Bushido idea. Which is why, obviously, they don't play that up in the American version. And they go a different direction with that kind of philosophy on it. But otherwise, culturally, there's a lot of things that you can draw across there, which is a connection that's been made over and over again after that, because people realize the cultural connection. Or redoing... Shakespeare plays in different time eras, I think, can work really well, but only if it's a place where the same kind of power struggles and the same kind of deals happen. So I saw a great production of King Lear that was all done as like a near future corporate thing, with essentially like the old guy is the head of this huge corporation and he's splitting it up between his kids because like there's too much power and the whole nine there, which I thought worked really well as an adaptation. And you can glean new cool things from that. My issue with trying to do Akira in America, like a fully American version of it, is that we've never had that kind of a mass tragedy occur in America to the population as a whole. There have been a lot of horrible things in American history that have killed a ton of people, but that aren't a part of the mass national consciousness, because it never affected the dominant white culture of,
we don't
of
even
America.
Discuss it in schools.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we didn't do anything wrong.
Hey-o. So... in order to have that kind of like that deep-seated fear that drives so many of the characters of we can't ever let this happen again, or we need to be the ones in charge of the power so that we can't be hurt again, would be difficult to adjust to the American film.
So you're saying after 4 years of Trump presidency, Prump president.
I'm President Prump from Pahrump, Nevada.
So after 4 years of Trump presidency, you think America will finally be ready for a Akira movie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because we'll probably have had, world-ending earthquakes and God knows how many wars. So yes, I would totally agree with you there that, a Trump presidency would make for a more valid American remake of Akira. But it was the same issue with the Old Boy transition to America. So much of Old Boy is rooted in the Korean cultural norms that I don't know how much of that translates well to the American cultural norms. Then again, I never saw the American version.
Right,
I
haven't either, and everything that I've seen about it, know about it, has just made me sad/sick.
Yeah, that's been my reaction as well. But so yeah, that's my worry about them doing an American live action too. I mean, I guess doing an animated remake would be just a straight slap in the face of the original artist.
Shut up, you don't know what you're doing.
Yep, we're gonna remake your story with my drawings. Fuck y'all and fuck your fam. Yeah, that would, yeah.
Especially too, there's some old school animated stuff that was hand drawn that I can see the art style of the day not necessarily holding up, but Akira totally holds up in terms of art style.
Yeah. And you couldn't do it hand animated, but then trying to do the whole thing, you're able to create this surreality with animation that is almost impossible to create visually with live action film. And it's worrisome to me to if they try to make that final sequence go down where the superorganism happens and it just starts eating the city.
Well, I mean, if that happens and if they do it as 3 movies, that probably won't be coming out until 2024 or something like that. So hopefully the technology will have advanced.
True.
That will all be Akiras.
So we'll all just be us being oh, it's like a baby picture. This is the video of us being born. We've all become Cronenbergs here. We can all get Cronenberged. I mean, actually, if they had Cronenberg direct... and Trump is president for 8 years.
8, you're upping the ante.
I'm upping the ante. Let's get true national trauma so that we can fuel our fucking art with it.
So we can have Neo DC?
Yes. Neo DC, Neo New York. New York.
Oh, God,
the whole thing will be a Futurama. Yes. Or Neo Los Angeles. There's a bunch of great urban sprawls that would work. The closest analog I think would be New York City.
Probably, considering Tokyo's not capital.
Not the capital. But I think that there would be something to be said for Los Angeles. But again, you'd have to have that national tragedy.
Why not do one of each? I mean, there was Escape from New York and there was Escape from LA.
Akira, Part 1, New York. Part 2, Akira does Hollywood. Rolling down the street, just screaming Kaneda as it just eats the Hollywood side. I could do that. I really hope that if they do make a live action remake, that the giant superorganism still screams Kaneda at periodic intervals, and that the other characters just scream Tetsuo,
and that it ends up being put into one of the theme park institutions, it ends up at Universal or Disneyland.
I love it.
So you can just go on the superorganism ride.
It's accepted its place in the world as a fucking theme park ride. that's absolutely a terrible idea. I would actually go on the Akira ride. Like, it's like the E.T. ride. You're going to slowly drive through Akira. Oh, look, it's a clown getting beaten with a spiky pipe. Oh, yeah. This room goes on and on. Oh, this is the room where we hose you down with milk. They never explain the milk.
Well, they quasi do. I think it's the children trying to appear menacing when they have the aversion to blood. Because Tetsuo cuts himself.
And they all freak and flee.
Right. So that's the closest that I've come. I mean, there could be deeper meaning, and I'm just an asshole.
No, that's actually a really good explanation, because I hadn't thought. I was like, because this time I was like, is that milk? That looks like milk. I remember that being milk. Why are they leaking milk? And then Tetsuo was like, it's milk. And I was like, son of a bitch, it's milk. But why? But that actually makes total sense, is that it's them trying to be intimidating and have the blood effect of, like, dripping blood, but they're too freaked out by the blood because they're horrible, growth-stunted, emotionally broken children with super psych powers. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, that's just such a bleak universe. Mm-hmm. And it's really fun how bleak it is and how straight they deal with the bleakness, but, like, Jesus, that's a bleak universe.
Yeah, no, the flashback or the flash forward or wherever the hell it is in the timeline, depending on how you want to think about it and how you want to read into some of the lines that have been said throughout the course of the film. But the final scene with, like, the test subject stuff.
Yeah, where it actually shows you how Akira and all of them became what they are. Mm. Which is also interesting because that means that the other Espers were in ground zero of the first experience. And they do imply it's like, oh, we'll all get to see Akira again. But then was the end of that essentially the same as the end of this? Did it go out the same way? But this time they weren't able to escape it. Also, what was their end game? What was their end game? Because their end game wasn't flying into the thing. Was their end game... What was it? I want to know. Don't fucking tell me. They didn't tell me anything. At the end of it, I felt like Kaneda, and I don't want to feel like Kaneda. Also, just got to throw this out there. The fact that at the end, Kei is like, totally like, yeah, Kaneda, I'm into it. It's like, you're 25, motherfucker. This is a fucking child. Like, get your shit straight.
Japan.
But the whole fucking movie, the point is that she's like, you're a goddamn child. You're 15 years old. I don't want none. I'm a freedom fighter. Stop trying to fuck me. And then at the end, it's like, I love you, Kaneda. Let's go bang now because you've proved you're a badass. And like that whole
now
thing.
Now you're a man.
But no. We just arrested another teacher in Texas for doing exactly this.
Yeah, but age of consent in Japan is like 14 or 16 or something like that?
It's actually 18. The federal age of consent is 14. However, in every single province of Japan, they have locally raised the age of consent to 18. Because each province can set their own. So technically, the only place in Japan where the age of consent is 14 is in Japanese waters, outside of provincial waters, but still inside of Japanese borders.
Okay, the logistics of that sound incredibly creepy.
Yes. But that's my point. It's, if you really, really, really want to have sex with a 14-year-old in Japan, you can technically go out into the water, outside of provincial waters, but inside Japanese waters, and then it's legal. But that still doesn't make it okay.
No, none of it makes it okay.
Doesn't fucking make it okay.
There probably should be laws like there are in states. Like, you cannot take a minor across borders for the purpose of having sex with them if it's legal in another state.
It's still illegal right here, guys. But yeah, so it's a thing. Yeah, transporting a minor across state lines for immoral purposes is, I believe, the technical name of the charge. Thank you, Chuck Berry.
But I mean, this was also made in the 80s. I don't know what consent was in the 80s in Japan.
The consent laws, which again, that's a cultural context thing that actually I should look up.
And there's a lot of weird cultural stuff in there.
Yeah.
We're just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah.
Saying,
No, we can explore some of the other cultural things. The rape clowns, being an interesting example, as well as again the essentially the kind of glorification of the military dictatorship and the essentially casting.
If it was glorification, that may be how you're choosing to look at it in terms of who you liked in the story, in terms of character and everything. But I definitely think that the struggle is real, and that's what's being focused on and being highlighted as the struggle. I mean, the people that you're following are active members of resistance.
Yes.
Kaneda being jumped in. And you've got Tetsuo, who's a victim of government experimentation.
Yes. But you also have the fact that the primary villain of the story is the one who is secretly running the resistance and is willing to use all of these people who are fighting for a better tomorrow essentially for personal gain and is willing to throw away their lives, versus the colonel, whose entire thing is like, you're all bickering about stupid things that don't matter. There's like specifically that thing where the guy's like, we need to talk about welfare for the poor, and everyone in the council is like, oh, this jack off, and it's obviously supposed to be like, that's ridiculous, we don't need to talk about welfare right now. And I'm like, you're painting all of the actual politicians who are talking about real policy issues that need to be addressed as being essentially short-sighted fuddy-duddies, a la the entire beginning of Isaac Asimov's Foundation. I don't know if you have read it, but there's like a series of scenes of like, there's one brave character who understands what's really going on and everyone else is up their own ass. And like that happens to like multiple characters in a row because it's covering like thousands of years of timeline. But like that same kind of thing happens throughout the film with the colonel trying to be like, but don't you see, the real threat is Akira, and it is. I mean,
that's more born out of the colonel being a man of action and doing what needs to be done.
Yeah. And
a reflection on his character rather than a reflection on what's going on in terms of government. Because there are talks about, police and military working together and how that's fucked up. There's the talks about being under martial law, essentially.
Once he seizes control at the end.
So, I don't know. I would disagree with that. But
okay.
I think...
You make a point there.
Positively or negatively, it's a theme that's brought up.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of how you're looking at it.
And that's a very good point, is that none of the depictions are completely positive or completely negative for any of the political sides. And there is a certain amount of that. I did feel as though at the end you're supposed to be cheering for the colonel to succeed.
Well, he's the one that's dealing with the clear and present danger. Whatever else you want to say about his character, whatever else you want to say about right and wrongness, he is a man of action.
Yes. And he is, and right now they need some motherfucking action.
Yeah, and his main thing from the beginning has been the city not blowing up and recreating the horror 30-some years ago.
Which, again, is that short-sightedness of the civilian government.
Has science gone too far? Why?
Quite probably, once again.
According to Colonel, most definitely.
Hey. I mean, I think science is always going too far, according to the Colonel. But the Colonel still believes we must grasp the power and bend it to our will. Which is the other thing at the beginning, is I'm like, you should have just closed the door. First thing, instantly. Oh, yeah, he's the key to unlocking Akira's full power. Excellent. Shoot him in the back of the head. Now, obviously, this isn't the moral choice, but it is the practical choice to prevent giant fuck-to-death crater from happening again. And instead of that, the Colonel does go, well, guess we gotta play with fire again, and then walks
he makes
out.
the point about following orders until the people whose orders that he's following are too fucked to death that he's not going to follow them anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Which
yeah.
is...
Do you really think I'm going to turn the city over to you in the middle of this? Shoot him. Wait, what? Yeah, because all the soldiers are like, we ain't doing this. But I think that we can definitely say that in summation, this is a movie. A beautiful movie. Movie with gorgeous sound and color. With a complex and textured interpretation.
Yes.
That we definitely have somewhat different interpretations of, but that I think we can both look at each other's position across the great gulf of the beginning of the universe, or these 3 inches between our chairs, and see the other's position. But I definitely think that this is a movie worth watching and something that the audience should do.
I agree, and you talked about it with myriads of different interpretations, and I also think that the themes that played out in the movie have merit of themselves, in addition to interpreting. And I can't even speak anymore. We're done.
Oh hell no! I ain't getting out of bed today.